the 2x, 3x mindset. I also believe that education is inoculation against disruption. Let's virtually hold hands and say that together. Education is inoculation against disruption. Education is inoculation against disruption. And you being here at this summit shows me you're the kind of person who is more interested in having a big library than a very huge TV. You're the kind of person who, rather than being all about entertainment, really understands the value of education. I come from very humble beginnings. I grew up on the East Coast of Canada, small town, immigrant parents, who I'm blessed to still have with me today. And, you know, I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. A lot of people didn't give me much of a chance. So many people didn't think I'd amount to anything. But what was most helpful to me was learning and books and going to conferences and having mentors and being open to new ideas that would disrupt the way I saw the world. And so you being here at Super Growth Summit is such a vote for your greatest self. It's such a wise decision in this world where so many people are playing with their phones. I think you can change the world, or you can play with your phone all day. You can't do both. So I want to say bravo. I want to give you a virtual standing ovation. I'd like you to take a moment right now, a few seconds actually, and just applaud yourself for being here at Super Growth Summit. Because it shows that you're willing to learn new ideas from me and the rest of the faculty. It shows you're willing to let go of your old habits for the sake of even better habits. I really believe that the old part of us must experience a crucifixion for the newest and best part of us to experience a resurrection. And that's why personal development is the best move you can make, but it's a dangerous game because you have to let go of the way you saw the world yesterday before you came into this virtual summit. You have to let go of the old you. And most people would rather die than change. Most people cling to the safe harbor of the known and spend the best hours of their best days watching television in a subdivision versus reading, learning, having mentors, embracing new ideas, and then of course, acting on the ideas that they learn so they get traction on the knowledge and make it real. So I want to applaud you. I want to say thank you. It is great to be here. I am in my writing cottage here in South Africa. And you can maybe see the mountain bikes behind me. I've been mountain biking, working on a new creative project. I've been reading many different books. Sometimes I just read all day and I think, and then I write in my moleskins. I've got these moleskins journals that I take with me everywhere. And I'm in a really reflective mood. And I want to share really from the heart some of the ideas that I've learned and some of the methods that I've shared with the billionaires and the titans of industry and the sports superstars and the entertainment heroes and the movement makers that I've been blessed to mentor for the past 2 decades. The starting point, though, is a poem. And you're going to go, Robin, we want some hard-hitting principles and methods and tactics to help us be everyday heroes of our lives. Why are you talking about a poem? But, you know, when I was young in school, my father, who was a family physician for 54 years, and he took a poem of the great Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore, and he translated it and he put it onto our refrigerator door so my brother and I could read it every morning before we went off to school. And here's what it said on that piece of paper. It said, spring is past, summer has gone, and winter is here. And the song that I meant to sing remains unsung, for I have spent my days stringing and unstringing my instrument. As I got older, I said, Dad, what was that poem all about? And he looked at me and he smiled a gentle smile. And he said, Robin, that was a poem written by a man whose heart was filled with regret over a life half lived. He said, Robin, that was a poem written by a man who was busy being busy and he never got to sing the song that his great life was meant to be. He said, Robin, that was a man who was always getting ready to show leadership and love and decency and nobility and bravery, but He just got busy in the thick of life. And so the great song and promise that he was meant to live never saw the light of day. We live in a world right now, I'm sure you'll agree, there's so much volatility. I've actually never seen so much volatility in my life. There's so much disruption. There's so much turmoil. But it is darkest before the dawn, and things must fall apart before they can be built up better. I think it was Nietzsche, actually it was Nietzsche, who said, chaos gives birth to dancing stars. And so all of the disruption and all of the uncertainty, it will give way to a better world. So please know that this too shall pass. And yet, this is also a time of opportunity. It's a time to build yourself up, to build this interior core of warriorhood and heroism. This is a great time for you to go within, to look at your values, to read the right books, to learn the right ideas, to think, to plan your next 5, 10, 15, 20, 50, and 100 years. It's a great time to distribute value. So many of your competitors, your peers in your industry. I know many of you are entrepreneurs and trainers and professionals from different walks. This is an incredible time for you to upgrade your skills, upgrade your mindset, grow your heart set. It's a great time for you to launch that business or scale the business. It's a fantastic time for you to get fit. So many people are so scared they're contracting and they're waiting to ride out the storm. Please remember, rough seas make great sailors. And why wait for heroes to show up when you have it in you to become one of them? So there are a lot of people who are contracted, a lot of people busy being busy. There's a lot of people addicted to their phones and social media and watching shiny toy digital movies and films and games. And I believe an addiction to distraction is the death of your creative production. Please write that down. An addiction to distraction is the death of your creative production. You can play with your phone all day. You can change the world. You cannot do both. And there's a big difference between real work, heavyweight work, and fake work. And once you understand that decision, and then you exercise the discipline required to battle-proof your focus, so you just do the work that matters, you make such a profound difference in your life. Well, I think this is a good time for me to share a story with you about a man named Joey Dunlop. I was in Northern Ireland giving a leadership presentation, and so many people were saying, Robin, have you heard about Joey Dunlop? We think you will love his story. And I said, no, I've never heard about him. And I went back to my hotel room and I did some research and I found a story of a true hero and someone who's definitely a titan. Joey Dunlop was a 5-time world motorcycle racing champion. Joey Dunlop was a man who was beloved by the people of his country. Joey Dunlop was a sports superstar. Sadly, Joey Dunlop was killed when the motorcycle he was racing hit a tree under wet conditions in Tallinn, Estonia. But here's what I love about the story of Joey Dunlop and why I think it's so important for you to know it. When no one was watching, Joey Dunlop would take the trailers that would carry his motorcycles and he would fill them with food. And he would drive to Romania and he would feed hungry orphans with his own bare hands. You see, leadership and success is so much about what you do when no one is watching. Anyone can be world-class when you have an audience. Anyone can be ethical when all eyes are on you. Anyone can go the extra mile and under-promise and over-deliver when you see people witnessing what you're doing. Let me ask you this. How ethical are you when no one's watching? How disciplined are you when you don't have an audience? How passionate are you about your work and your life when you're the only person in the room? And so when no one was watching, he would feed hungry orphans. And it wasn't about applause, because a gift that you expect a reward from is not a real gift. And so he lived his life in this way. And when he died, listen to this, please, 50,000 people streamed out into the streets of the town where he lived to attend his funeral, and to sing testimony to the way he conducted his life. 50,000 people left their work, left the streets, and walked to his funeral to honor the way this man lived. And I guess what I'm proposing to you is even the longest life is a very short ride. So many of us are great postponers. We will do these things. We will get fit. We will be more loving. We will take more risks. We will be more brave in the future when the time is ideal. Well, that time will never come. And what I'm proposing to you with great love and respect is this: even the longest life is a very short ride. And before you know it, we will be dust. And so I propose to you only two things are going to matter when you get to the last hour of your last day. Number one, who did you become? Did you use your trials to build triumphs? Who did you become? Did you use your work to grow in self-honor by pushing only magic into the marketplace? Who did you become in an industry where people were looking for the cash grab? Were you the person who offered ridiculous amounts of value? Who did you become? Did you listen to the great symphonies, and did you take the great travels and allow the beauty of the world to shape you? Who did you become? Did you read the great books? Who did you become? Did you learn to have 3-hour meals with your family as the sun set? Who did you become? Were you ethical, honorable, loving, decent, brave, excellent in a world where too many people are card-carrying members of the cult of mediocrity? And after who did you become, I propose to you on the last hour of your last day, the only other thing that will matter will be how many people did you help? Because to lead is to serve. The founder of Rotary, Paul Harris, said, "The one who serves best profits most." Please brain tattoo that. The one who serves best profits most. Not only monetarily, not only in terms of your reputation, but in terms of how you feel about yourself. I've mentored so many billionaires, they have all the money in the world and they can't stand themselves. What's the point of that? To lead is to serve. To be a hero is to be of use. The byproduct is you dominate your domain. You build a cult of fanatical followers. You make the money because you deliver rich value to many people. When I was growing up, my dad translated a Sanskrit line into English, and he used to say, "Robin, when you were born, you cried while the world rejoiced." He said, "Son, live your life in such a way that when you die, the world cries while you rejoice." Well, let me get into some key truths about mastery and great habits and living a great life. So I've shared some philosophy with you. I want to give you some specific laws and principles so you have some structure. I would say, though, we live in a world where so many people say, "Robin, give us the tactics, give us the methods." Please write this down. Methodology without philosophy is a hollow victory. Methodology without philosophy is a hollow victory. So you can have the right methods, but if you haven't articulated a philosophy for your life, in other words, what is my personal Mount Everest? What are my top 5 values? What does success mean to me? Warren Buffett was asked, how do you define success? He said it's important to develop your own scoreboard. You've got to figure out what success means to you. Otherwise, you could live your mother's life or your father's life or your neighbor's life or society's life, but betray yourself. I think it's better to fail at the world's definition of success and win at your own definition of success. So please just remember that idea. Methodology without philosophy is a hollow victory. You want to know your philosophy. You want to know your personal Mount Everest. You want to know the truths of how you want to conduct your life. And then you want to take the methods and get you to your mountaintop. Otherwise, you might spend the best hours of your best days elegantly, efficiently using methods that get you up the wrong mountain. And a life is a tragic thing to waste. Okay, let's go. Law number 1, shift from victimhood to heroism. Victims. There's a lot of people playing or operating like victims in the world today. And you can tell a victim not only because they complain, excuse, and blame. Complain, excuse, and blame. C-E-B. C-E-B. Avoid that virus at all costs. Victims complain, they excuse, and they blame. Once you strip out those 3 elements from your life, watch what happens to your productivity, your performance, and your happiness. The thing about a victim is they give away their power to external events. They say it's because of my childhood I can't radiate positivity. It's because of the economy and what's going on in the world right now that I can't develop my skill set and dominate my domain. It's because I'm really busy right now, playing with my phone, looking at digital distractions, that I can't get ultra fit. By the way, fitness is a game changer. Victims blame. Leaders and everyday heroes are so different. They refuse to give away their power to external things. Their power and their access of power comes from within. They don't blame. They understand they have the power of choice. You know, when we were born, I believe we were born into genius. We were not born into victimhood. When we were born, we had sparkling eyes. When we were born, we were possibilitarians. We wanted to be astronauts. We wanted to be billionaires. We wanted to be movement makers. We wanted to be humanitarians. We wanted to be poets. We wanted to be yoga teachers. We wanted to be entrepreneurs. We dreamed. But here's what happens. After we leave the perfection of childhood, we receive this brainwashing from the world, and we receive this heart washing from our culture. These little micro programs on be average, don't dream too big, don't be too kind, don't give too much, don't be too excellent, because don't fail very often. And this programming hypnotizes us away from our primal genius. You know, I was in Thailand a number of years ago giving a leadership presentation to a large organization, and people there were telling me about a golden Buddha. They said, Robin, you must go see the golden Buddha. Everywhere I go, it's like, you've got to go see the golden Buddha. So guess what? I went to see the golden Buddha. And I learned the story is this priceless, magnificent, giant monument of pure gold. And then I did some research and I learned the backstory of the golden Buddha. Thousands of years ago, people used to revere this priceless treasure of the golden Buddha. And then it became clear invaders were going to come to Thailand and the golden Buddha could be stolen. So they hatched a plan. They decided to cover the golden Buddha with layers and layers and layers of mud. And so they got together and layer upon layer upon layer, they covered the golden Buddha, layer upon layer upon layer, until you could not see this golden Buddha. It just looked like a mountain of mud. And sure enough, the invaders came through and they missed the golden Buddha. All they saw was a mountain of mud. A few hundred years later, there's someone walking by and he looks over and there's a mountain of mud, but there's some gold peeking out and it was shining in the afternoon sun. And so he started to chip away at the golden Buddha, layer upon layer upon layer. And then he got his friends together, layer upon layer upon layer, chipping away at the layers above the golden Buddha. And every time they moved through one layer, more of the gold shone. And they moved through another layer and more of the gold shone. Eventually, they went through all of the mud and there was this magnificent monument made of pure gold. You are like that. You were born into genius. You have such wisdom in you right now. You have such bravery and courage deep within you, even if you're not intimate with it right now. You already know where you need to be for your greatest life, because instinct is so much more powerful than intellect. It's just that the layers of fear and doubt and disbelief that the world has sold you might be covering your primal genius and your highest promise. And so point number one is to shift from victimhood to leadership and heroism. Start the process if you haven't. You probably already are, but to mine through the layers of mud, the fear, the doubt, the disbelief, the limiting beliefs that are covering your wisdom, your bravery, your power, your heroism. Okay, so what would be some habits to do that? Number one, get a great morning routine. Rise, yes, I'm going to say it, win the battle of the bed, join the 5 a.m. club, put mind over mattress. It'll take 66 days, roughly, according to the research of University College London, to install a new habit where you get to a point, they call it automaticity. Let's say that together, automaticity, where it actually becomes easier to do the new habit, in this case, getting up at 5 a.m., than to stay in bed. You see, all change is hard at first, it's messy in the middle, and it's beautiful at the end. All change is hard at first, it's messy in the middle, and it's beautiful at the end. And you want to practice getting up at 5 a.m. for 66 days until you get to a point where it's easier to get up at 5 a.m. than not to get up at 5 a.m. Now, what do you do at 5 a.m.? You can pray, you can meditate, you can exercise. But the first way to move through the layers is to give yourself a 60-minute victory hour from 5 to 6 every morning. It'll be messy for about 66 days. Then you will have such an incredible psychological advantage. You will be up, everyone else is sleeping. There is such quietude in the air at 5 a.m. And you're running on a treadmill, or you're doing yoga, or you're doing jumping jacks, or you're out for a run. And you're activating a pharmacy of mastery. You're releasing dopamine, the inspirational neurotransmitter. You're really reducing cortisol, the fear hormone. You're releasing serotonin, the pleasure neurotransmitter. You're releasing BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which upgrades and optimizes your brain. So the first habit to move through these layers is the victory hour. Second habit I suggested is morning exercise. You know, in one culture, they say when we are young, we would give up all of our health for wealth. And when we get old and wise, we would give up all of our wealth for one day of good health. I was in Qatar for a presentation, and someone gave me a piece of paper and he said, read it in your hotel when you get there later today. And I did. And it said, health is the crown on the well person's head that only the ill person can see. You want to be more productive. You want to be more prosperous. You want to be happier. Today, I challenge you with great love and respect. Do this. Start the process to get fit like a professional athlete. In my book, The Everyday Hero Manifesto, there's a model, the Trinity of Radiant Vitality. It talks about movement, which is all about exercise. It talks about nutrition, which is all about eating the right foods, eat clean, hydrate, supplement, and it talks about recovery, great rest. So number one, a great morning routine. Number two, morning exercise. And number three, to move through those layers, to own your heroism, keep a journal. Keeping a journal is incredibly powerful. When I've gone through difficult times in my life, I've gone to my journal and I've written about my pain, which has been a purification process for me. In my journal, I write my hopes. I write about my dreams. In my journal, if I watch a documentary where I learn some ideas, I download the ideas in my journal. Almost every morning, I write about the man I wish to become in the day ahead. I call it a pre-performance paragraph. There's another tool for you, a pre-performance paragraph. This is how you use the day ahead of you to grow stronger and to be the person that you wish to be. Second law I'm delighted to share with you is this. You can be weird or normal, but weird is a lot better. There's a great idea, which is everyone seems normal until you get to know them. And I just want to share with you that so many people are afraid to own their weirdness, but it is your weirdness that makes you so special. It is the way you see the world and the way you walk and the way that you talk, and your uniqueness is such a gift. We live in a world as never before where we're trying to be like everyone else. It's the cult of comparison. And we want to be liked by the world. So we see someone eating in a restaurant without even thinking, we go to that restaurant. We see someone wearing some clothes or driving a certain bicycle. We want that bicycle. And as human beings, we are tribal. We want to be like everyone else. Thousands of years ago on the savannah, if we left the herd, we would be killed. We would be hurt by warring tribes. We would be eaten by saber-toothed tigers. We would die of starvation. So we have developed a neurobiological instinct to be tribal. Beat that instinct by daily practice, because you can change the world and dominate your domain, or be like everyone else. You do not get to do both. Let me please put it to you this way, and I encourage you to write this one down. To have the results only 5% of the population has, you've got to be willing to do what 95% of the population is unwilling to do. I'll repeat that again because it's so important. To have the results only 5% of the population has, you've got to be willing to do what 95% of the people are unwilling to do. In other words, to play in the rare air of world class, you must be unorthodox. You must be a pirate. You must be willing to be different. You must be okay being weird, strange, and laughed at, a genuine contrarian. When I think about Basquiat, and I think about Shakespeare, and I think about Beethoven, I think about Hedy Lamarr, the incredible inventor. When I think about the world changers, these people all were different from everyone else. They had different morning routines, they had different work cycles, they had different pre-sleep rituals, they have different belief systems. Because if you follow the status quo, you will not produce anything fresh and new in the marketplace. One way to look at it is like this. Every visionary was initially laughed at before they were revered. The idea of the internet, the idea of putting a man on the moon, the idea of going to Mars, the idea of an airplane when an airplane did not exist, the idea of an automobile, the idea of an iPhone. These were such disruptive ideas until they became so used by the world, they became ubiquitous. So what I'm encouraging you to do is to not only leave the herd and challenge the status quo, I want you to seek out being abnormal. And I want you to trust yourself more. I want you to trust yourself more. I really want you to remember that your instinct is so much more powerful than intellect. Intellect is the some knowledge that the world has taught you. That's just the knowledge the world thinks is truth right now. But a lot of truths were debunked and dismissed. Before Galileo said, the world is not flat, it's round, the world, the status quo, thought that was true, that the world was flat. There's so many ideas that people think are true until they are dismissed and debunked. And so I want you to be a visionary, and that comes from owning your own weirdness, and even more importantly, trusting your instinct. Trusting your instinct over your intellect, because your instinct knows what is true. Which brings me to law number 3, be productive like Picasso painted. I was recently in Barcelona. I went to the Picasso Museum in the Born district, a place that I love walking through, and I was stunned by the productivity of Picasso. He had so many cycles. He would do drawings, he would do paintings. He was a cubist artist. He tried different modalities, but he was incredibly productive. One of my favorite stories, one day Picasso was in a marketplace and a woman came up to him and said, "Mr. Picasso, I'm such a huge fan. Would you please do a drawing for me?" And Picasso said, "Sure." So the woman pulled out a piece of paper and a pencil. She gave it to Mr. Picasso. And she said, "Here, Mr. Picasso, thanks for the drawing." And he did this drawing. And he gave it to the woman. And she looked at it and she said, "Ah, Mr. Picasso, fantastic." And she walked away. And he said, "Excuse me, dear lady." And she said, "Yes." And he said, "That'll be $1 million. And she said, "Oh, Mr. Picasso, come on, Mr. Picasso, $1 million. It only took you 60 seconds to do that." And he said, "Oh, my dear lady, it took me 30 years of daily practice to be able to do that in 60 seconds. And so the point is, we live in a world where people are confusing busyness with productivity. Please write that one down. Do not confuse busy with productivity. Do not confuse movement with progress. And I want you to be one of those rare air people who are monomaniacally focused on the few things that count. That is one of the secrets of genius. Minimalism versus maximalism. Do a few things really, really, really well. You know, Steve Jobs worked on the iPhone for 4 years. Then he worked on the next product for 4 years. If you look at Michelangelo's masterwork on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, it took him 4 years. And so what I'm encouraging you to do is to say no to most opportunities so you can say yes to the few opportunities where you can stay focused on them to create a masterwork. I also encourage you to work alone a lot. I call it the TBTF. It's a great daily work habit, the TBF, the tight bubble of total focus. For at least 5 hours a day, block yourself into a place where you are totally lost. No phone, no notifications, no shiny toys, no distractions, no things you could play with. So you do heavyweight work and real work versus fake work. Great masters all have a work lab. They work alone a lot. Solitude, silence is incredibly important for you doing your greatest work. Last few laws, one of which is be the kindest person in every room that you're in. I had a conversation with a friend the other night. He said, yes, I actually met Nelson Mandela. And I said, what was he like? And he said, you know, he was a great leader. He challenged me to be a better entrepreneur, but he was so incredibly kind. Kindness is not weakness. Humility is not meekness. When I mentor the great Titans, these people are firm and they're strong and they stand their ground and they protect themselves and they fight for their mighty mission. But they blend that with politeness. They're on time. They've got strong characters and they are kind. Starbucks is one of our clients, and I want to share a story about a manager at a Starbucks who understood that the business of business is people. I see so often people forget. They forget that the business of business is really relationships. Someone once said to me, Robin, you take care of the relationship, the money will take care of itself. And so there was this Starbucks where the manager was very much a relationship builder and someone who understood that by delivering value to people and caring about people, you build a cult of fanatical followers. And this manager of the Starbucks had a favorite customer whose name was Irene. And Irene had been a school teacher. And Irene was in her 80s. And Irene used to show up every morning at the Starbucks location holding the hands of an elderly gentleman. And every morning they would walk to the counter, order 1 cup of coffee, 2 cups, 1 pastry, and 2 forks. And when they could, they'd find the same table and they'd have a conversation, because business is a conversation. You lose the conversation with your customers, you will lose your business. And life is a conversation. You lose the conversation with your family, you'll lose the family. And self-mastery is a conversation. Lose the conversation with yourself, and you'll lose your sense of self and end up living someone else's life. One day, the manager noticed Irene was no longer coming to the coffee shop, so she got worried because she truly cared. 2 weeks later, she saw Irene in the bank, but Irene was no longer looking graceful and beautifully attired. Irene was looking disheveled. So the manager walked up and she said, Irene, is everything okay? And Irene said, no, everything is not okay. And the manager said, what happened? And Irene said, you know that gentleman who I come into the coffee shop with every morning? And she said, yes. And Irene said, well, that was my husband. And he took a massive stroke and he's gone. Irene said, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know if I'm going to make it. The manager of the coffee shop said, why don't you come back to the coffee shop? Maybe it'll make you feel better. Why don't you come back to the coffee shop and have a cup of coffee? And Irene said, but who would I drink it with? And the manager said, I'll drink it with you. And the two human beings in a world that craves more humanity, more decency, more kindness, went back to the coffee shop and ordered a cup of coffee with 2 cups one pastry with two forks, and had a conversation. Maya Angelou said it so much more elegantly than I ever could when she said, people may forget what you do, people may forget what you say, but no one will ever forget how you make them feel. So be kind, be on time, keep your promises. If you're not early, you're late. And just be a caring human being. It's so rare in this world. Final few ideas I'm going to wrap up with. Build a world-class lifestyle. There is no point in being successful and not enjoying your life. I was watching a documentary about John Paul Getty. At a point, he was the richest man in the world, but he was all alone in his mansion in the countryside of England. And he was worried about every little penny, and he was in such fear and such scarcity that he could not enjoy his art, he could not enjoy his family, he could not enjoy his wealth. So make sure you build your empires of productivity and mastery and service and maybe prosperity. But don't miss out on going to Mauritius and swimming with the dolphins. Don't miss out on going to Florence and seeing the Duomo. Don't miss out on going to the interesting places and seeing beautiful art and walking barefoot in a rain after a rainstorm, so you feel the beauty of life and you enjoy the fruits of your labor. Final idea, to lead is to be of use. Please remember that heroism has so much to do with impact. So often we forget what's most important until it's too late to do what's most important. When I was researching The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, I came across a curious story of an Indian Maharaja, and every morning the Indian Maharaja would celebrate his own funeral, complete with music and flowers. And all the while he'd be chanting, I have lived fully, I have lived fully, I have lived fully. And again, I asked my father, I said, Dad, why would this man get up every morning and celebrate his own funeral? And my dad smiled and said, Robin, that's easy. This man has developed a morning routine to remind him of his mortality. This man has developed a daily ritual to remind him that this day could be his last. And I don't think remembering that our lives are ultimately very short is depressing. I think it's inspiring, because it causes us to live to the point and get rid of the trivialities and the distractions and the nuisances that occupy too many good souls' days. And I want you to remember, ultimately, heroism is about making the world a better place, to make the world brighter because you are here, to be useful and helpful to people. When I was growing up, my dad did say to me, Robin, when you were born, you cried while the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way that when you die, the world cries while you rejoice. Or as one father said to his son on his deathbed, be ashamed to die until you have won a victory for humankind. So I wish you great lives, great success,